And Michael has frozen.
Mikey's frozen.
Instagram.
Oh,
I'm frozen?
You were
froze
frozen.
for a few seconds there.
Oh my goodness, it says my internet is unstable. And I thought it was just me. Could you hear me or was it just visually
Nope,
frozen?
both.
Oh dear.
Start all
I'll
over
start
again.
again.
We can
and
edit it.
we're probably going to have to edit. Yeah.
Well, yeah, let's start again. Shall we just start right from the top?
No. Let's
Okay.
pick it up. Thank you. During the show, please feel
So
free to.
professional.
Okay, start from the top then if you think it'll help.
It's Song Talk Radio with Michael, Neil, Phil, and the gang.
I may have said this before. Welcome to Song Talk Radio, the show with songwriters talking to other songwriters about the craft of songwriting. We share tips, tools, and techniques, and together we all become better at songwriting and alliteration. I'm your host, Mike Proudfoot, and with me are the members of the Song Talk Radio Action team, my co-hosts, Phil Emery. Hello, Phil.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And you?
I'm very excited to be here. It's going to be an awesome show, I think.
I think so. And Neil Modi, how are you, sir?
I'm doing quite well. Very excited for the show tonight.
Excellent. Everybody's on board. And you at home, during the show, please feel free to send your comments and questions to @SongTalkRadio on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, or you can email us at feedback@songtalk.ca and we will share them with the audience. And you can visit us at songtalk.ca where you will find out how you could possibly be a guest on the show. And don't forget, please subscribe to our show on YouTube where you can actually see us in action sitting on chairs in little boxes. Tonight, we have some very special guests, Martha and Mark from Martha and the Muffins. Many years ago, Martha and the Muffins roared out of the gate with a song that launched them into international recognition. Echo Beach was a #1 hit around the world, and since then, Martha and the Muffins have had numerous other hits and album releases. Their music is catchy and sonically adventurous with thoughtful lyrics and a keen sense of songwriting, which is one of the reasons they're here. After taking some time out for family and other musical explorations, Martha and the Muffins are back with a new release, Marthology In and Outtakes. It's a collection of rare singles, B-sides, and unreleased tracks, such as this new one, Do You Ever Wonder? And here's a little taste of it.
It's hard not to be bamboozled, dazzled all the time. It's hard to fight confusion when you're shaking like a leaf. I'm not going to tell you everything's okay, and obviously it isn't. People do the things they do, anything can happen. I want language on my lips, I want fire in my hips, I want vision in my eyes.
And welcome, Martha and Mark. Thank you for joining us. And thank you for using the word bamboozled in a song. I like that.
It's hard to
Welcome.
rhyme.
It's a great word. It's a great word.
So you started quite a while ago, and now you're back. What led you to release Marthology?
It was our manager, Gabriel, who suggested it. He's been suggesting it for quite a while, quite a few years, and we just decided it was the right time to do it. And we all agreed, and we went through all our songs that we had in our files and picked the ones that were appropriate.
It took a while because we have over 40 years. You did get a lot of stuff in your archives, and so there was a bit. Although the ones that were on there were all obvious choices, I think, and I think it was a really good thing to have done because over the years we'd sometimes come across some of these things and go, hey, that's a pretty good song. Why didn't that end up on an album? Or why did we never finish that? Or, why did we just let it out as a limited thing? So it's given people an opportunity to hear things that they might not have heard before. And in some cases, they definitely haven't heard before. And maybe gives a glimpse into our interest in writing all kinds of different music, because it's quite a diverse collection, and we spent a lot of time on the sequencing because it isn't a true album in the sense that all the songs were written,
Different time.
they were all written at different times. So we had to think about the sequencing because it's a lot of different stylistic changes over the course of listening to it.
It's also a lead into a Martha and the Muffins album for 2022 of new songs we're hoping to put out. So
Ah.
sort of a stopgap.
Great.
Did you so did you actually have to finish some of the songs?
No, they're all as they were recorded. Some of them are 35, maybe, well, 30. I think the oldest one's 35 years old. But actually, Phil, the only song we did add something to was a song called "Act Like a Woman," which ended up, it originated as a demo for a songwriting partner of ours, Hill Korkudis, who had a band called Hill and the Sky Heroes, and it was a demo for her album. And Martha did actually quite a different version on her 2013 solo album, but she wanted to add in this demo that appears on Marthology, it was just Hill singing, and Martha wanted to add her vocals, so she did, yeah. So that was the only addition.
Was that hard to do? Because I know when I go through my old stuff, the urge is to, well, I could fix that or I could tweak it, and you just wind up never actually finishing anything because you just keep on fixing and tweaking.
That can be a pitfall, and it's a deadly pitfall. I think Paul McCartney said recently at some point that he does his stuff and he does the best he can do, and then he moves on. Now, when he decides it's time to move on, I don't know, but he's been moving on and doing new stuff all his career, so I guess he has some sort of cutoff point. But that is, it can be a real pitfall, and especially with new recording or recently new recording technologies where you can do anything and everything. And sometimes, and the thing I like about this compilation is that a lot of the demo tracks are very simple because we never did finish them. So there might be, like a drum machine track and Martha's vocals and some guitar, and that's about it. And listening back to that stuff, I'm kind of going, I really like the simplicity of it, and that there's space around everything, and there's huge arrangements cluttering everything up. I sort of, in revisiting these things, I kind of like the openness of them.
I think that we wanted them to be what they are too. We didn't want to update them or something. They existed in the time that they were made.
Yeah, there's also a difference, like you say, if there was a demo recording from 35 years ago that was never, formally released on an album, or maybe it was a deep cut somewhere that maybe fans aren't really aware of, then you're bringing something fresh and new to it. Whereas, if it's something that the fans really are very familiar with, and you then twist it into something else, you kind of, you kind of isolate some people and be like, hey, wait a minute, we didn't ask for this. But it's an interesting thing. I mean, frankly, sometimes, I hear, like, I'm a big fan of some artists, and they, twist something around in a live show or something, which is kind of fun, and do a completely different take on it. But it sounds like it was an update to the arrangement more than anything else. It wasn't, you weren't tweaking the song itself.
No, just adding the vocals in that case. And you bring up an interesting point in a way, because as Mike said in the intro, Echo Beach was a big song for us, and one of the songs on Marthology is a 30th anniversary version we did, which is now 10 years old, but we put it as a limited internet release 10 years ago. And it's interesting seeing the comments that are online on our YouTube channel, because some people really, really like it, and other people really, really hate it, because they didn't want you messing with this sacred song that because from a songwriting point of view, you got to do what you got to do, and we find it interesting to do.
I think more people like it than don't like it.
Yeah, definitely. But there are the ones going, they ruined a perfectly good song, and each to their own, I say,
Yeah.
And
It's
again,
not like
if
you
you're
erase the old one.
yeah, if you're doing things, on the basis of what people want to hear, then you probably it's not a good place to be. You got to do it on your own terms, right? Like if you're feeling it, then go for it.
Yeah, exactly.
I heard the Alanis Morissette say in an interview the other day that she writes for herself first,
Hmm.
and then she gives it out to the audience. And hopefully, they like it. So,
Yeah.
That makes sense. I'm wondering, in going through and sorting to find what songs you're going to put on this, what you observed about the progression of your songwriting over the years. Did you notice anything?
well, we didn't
Progression.
really take anything from the very early days, because in the early days we didn't know what we were doing on any level. I think, like performing, songwriting, singing. It was just something that we were trying, and everybody was so many people were trying, being in a band and writing songs in the late 70s, early 80s, and
Hmm.
we were just one of many.
And I also think that progression, it kind of implies that you're getting, well, no, you are getting better at it because you are writing more. But though a lot of the early songs I think were every bit as good as our later songs.
Yeah.
So it's more that um, you get, looking back on this stuff, you get a wider perspective because you have the luxury of hindsight. And some things that you thought weren't that great at the time, you realize they really were, but you didn't, you had to have some distance on it in order to be able to see that. So I'm not sure that
But
y- what you
well, I
want
was
to
going to say that the songs that are on Marthology are more from a central time in our career, I think, rather than a lot of earlier or late stuff that happened. Just so happened that the songs that we chose were all from a certain period. I think when we had first had our home studio, developed our songwriting quite a bit. I think having a home studio,
Mhm.
well, it developed our ability to, yeah, to record on our own and learn, what how recording techniques work.
the structure of songs,
um,
though, too. I think.
yeah, but in terms of progression, I go, well, maybe the progression is more like a three-dimensional thing rather than
Mhm.
an A to B kind of things, because
Right.
we're kind of style jumpers in a way that that the people that are really familiar with, what is it, like 8 or 9 albums we've done at this point. We came out of the new wave post-punk era, and then we kind of got into punk funk with the album Dance Park, and then we went full throttle into the dance
Mm.
thing.
Black Stations White.
But at the same time, on all those albums, there was always a wide range of stuff. You might have black stations, white stations, but then there were sort of what would now be called deep cuts,
Mhm.
which were quite unlike that. So we've always had our hand in a lot of. We're interested in tons of different kinds of music, and as we were influenced or became interested in other things, that would feed into the songwriting process as well.
Mm. Yeah, because I guess the other part to that, or the part to Mike's question is not necessarily a progression as in getting better, but how have things changed in your songwriting process? Like, are you approaching things in a different way than you were 35 years ago?
Oddly enough, no.
No.
The things, well, the first two albums, it was basically a young band doing uh, their best efforts to get from A to B without making any mistakes. Like if you got through the song and nobody screwed up, that was the main thing. And then when we started working with Dan Lanois on the third album, This Is the Ice Age, he was the one who taught us about groove and feel
Mm.
instead of just rushing through everything. We began to understand what that was all about. And at that time, I was able to apply a lot of the experimental music techniques that I was doing in art college
Mm.
onto that album. And I'm doing the same things now. I'm thinking about sound the same way I was thinking about it as a 24, 23-year-old. And of course, the tools for that have become for sound making have become much more sophisticated. But the ideas, my approach to writing a pop song, but like putting in an interesting texture, which we do from time to time, hasn't really changed. And I think
Mhm.
sometimes you have like a central thing inside you that maybe the progression is that you recognize its value as you get older. That might be the thing. But
Yeah, I think that's the trick. I can speak personally for me is that I feel like I arrive at solutions faster and better. I don't know about better, but at least faster than I used to. I make decisions a little bit quicker, and I'm more confident with those decisions. Whereas before, it was a little bit aimless, and sometimes something happy happened, but it wasn't always the case.
I think it depends on who you're writing the song for. Like if you're just sitting down, you have an idea, and an idea comes to you, and you will have to write this song. Or if you're writing for for a purpose,
Hmm.
we've done music for films and television, and and we've collaborated with people. There's a lot of situations where it's not just me and Mark writing songs for Martha and the Muffins,
Right, right.
and if you're writing something to like, for some other artists, because I've done some of that with younger artists and collaborated, and I the tendencies I have to write things that are a bit more strange and outside.
for
Martha,
yourself,
for myself,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
become less important.
Hmm. No, that's really good. As a lesson for any songwriter is to branch out into different genres, different areas, different spheres of musical languages, right? So that when you do come back to say doing a Martha Muffin song, then you can extrapolate, even if it is kind of subconscious. You tend to pull things from other areas where you've worked, whereas if you're sort of pigeonholed into one specific, you're a folk songwriter and that's all you do, then I don't know, maybe your stuff ends up not being as varied as evidence with you guys, right?
Yes, and what is a folk songwriter? Like, what does that?
Well,
Hmm.
yeah,
But you're right. I mean, what does that even mean, right?
yeah.
But I think the whole thing is you have to keep your ears and eyes open all the time.
Hmm.
But because we live in a world of sound, and it's never been more available, you know, than ever now. And also just from a lyric point of view, you have to have your antennae out all the time if you want to write. um, First of all, you have to be true to yourself, whatever that means, but you have to find what's
Find
true to
your
your,
voice.
yeah, find your voice, as you say, and try and be honest and presenting that voice. But also, like, there's no end to what you can get lyrically just by listening. You might be watching television, somebody says something, you might hear something while you're walking down the street that somebody says, whatever. But the trick is to write it down, or
Hmm.
record it on your phone
Hmm.
or something, because those things are fleeting.
Yep.
They just, they come by and you got to grab them. And I think both of us sometimes get great inspiration when we're either half going to sleep,
Hmm.
waking up out of sleep, and you go,
I'll remember that because it's so good.
yeah, and you don't.
And you don't.
Of course
Ah,
not.
I had that happen a couple of nights ago, and I can't remember what
No, that's why
I
you always.
know.
That's why if that ever happens to me, it doesn't happen very often, but I will grab my phone, hit the little voice memo thing, record it, and you know what? You sleep better after that because then you're not worried about, am I going to remember this in the morning? You've got it down. Sleep well. Deal with it tomorrow.
You're not lying on your back staring at the ceiling going, I know it's going to come back any second now.
Yeah.
Um, I hope you don't mind me asking this question because I think you're in a unique position to answer this. Because Martha and the Muffins came out in a really special time in the late 70s and the early 80s on Queen Street in Toronto. And, that's where I was a teenager. And it was such an amazing place to be where you'd go to the Beverly and see one band because it was free. And then you'd go to the Reveille and then the Cabana Room and all. And it was very concentrated. There was a very concentrated scene and it was very, very exciting then. And I've noticed when I've gone out to bars now, everything is so dissipated. There's not like that sort of section where there's like, you could just walk around and see 10 bands, which you could on like a Friday and Saturday night on Queen Street in Toronto. How do you sort of see like the modern way of musicians sort of collaborating versus that sort of unique, which I think was fairly unique, having all these bands and all these bars in one central location?
Um, I think one of the key things is affordable space.
Yeah.
Mm.
That has completely disappeared, and I'm quite interested in um, urban sociology anyway, and and it ends up in our songs a lot too. But I think a lot of people who think about this kind of stuff have talked about this that's happened in cities all over North America and probably the world too, where if you don't have affordable space, and we're talking across like the broad section of the arts, visual arts, music, those scenes can't really germinate because nobody can afford to be in a room as we were at number 4 St. Patrick's Street, just off Queen Street, which was the former stable of the Rex Hotel.
Mm.
Freezing in the winter, and I broke guitar string after guitar string because it was so cold. But that space probably only cost, I mean, I don't remember, but it was probably like,
Nothing.
it's probably nothing.
Like $10 each a
Yeah.
month.
Yeah, and just up the street at that time was the music gallery in its, I believe, first location.
Yes.
Well, when Village by the Grange got built, the music gallery that disappeared along with those old buildings.
They moved.
They did move, but increasingly, the rents get high. How can we all get together? I mean, I've read about how the art scene in San Francisco has died, and like after the First World War, that was like a culture hub. And now all it is wealthy people in condos and no street life on the sidewalk level. How can anything, the world that you described, um, Phil, is like, I don't know how we get that back. I guess it just gets further and further. Like maybe there's scenes on the outskirts of the GTA where maybe you can get space, or people are meeting in their living rooms. I mean, I don't think it's dead, but I understand what you're saying about that atmosphere. There's certain periods in history, and like New York in the 70s, centered around CBGBs and all those clubs. It was the same thing. Like when you think of all the bands that played in that club,
Oh yeah.
Beverly was like that too, as you've said. And that little strip along Queen Street was a beehive of activity. And we haven't seen a lot of live music at all lately, and who knows what it's going to be like post COVID. But there's a lot of talk in Toronto about the number of clubs that have had to close, and are they going to be replaced by something? I don't know.
I'm in a band, and one of the places, our lead singer is from Mississauga, and Mississauga's got like a growing music scene just west of Toronto for our listeners, and we played at this one venue called the Rec Room. I think there's a Rec Room in Toronto as well, and it's sort of combination restaurant, arcade, and music venue. So like there's one room with a stage, but people are flowing in and out of there into the restaurant bar area, and there's games going on in the background, and it's just like this hybrid thing of like, it's not just a bar with a stage or a black box with a stage. They're combining these other business revenue streams basically into one gigantic venue thing.
And
That
how do you feel
yeah.
about that as a band that plays in a venue like that? And my second question to you is, where do you rehearse?
We rehearse at my lead singer lives with his family in Mississauga. They have a townhome and they have a basement, so we rehearse in his basement.
Okay.
Right. So I'm very lucky to have that,
Tried
because
and
I live in a small condo. Our bass player lives in a small condo, like you're saying. We don't have the space or the means to be able to do that. And we can go to Rehearsal Factory, but there's a cost involved there.
That's closing down.
Yeah.
Are they closing down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you mean, the whole enterprise?
They got sold to.
One of the locations closed down, I'm pretty sure. The one on Front Street or I don't know. I don't remember. But anyway, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, I'd like to take it back to you guys.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about your lyrical inspiration. What's the division of labor when you're writing songs? Is it one person lyrics, one person melody, or
Well,
the music or the sounds, or how does it? What's the process?
there's no real set way for doing it. Mark and I would think we write very different lyrics, but sometimes we get together and we collaborate on the lyrics, and that works as well.
Hmm.
So sometimes I think people can always recognize what Mark's lyrics are and what mine are, and then the ones that we do together, it's less easy to tell. But I like to write the things that are play on words.
Hmm.
Mark writes bizarre things.
Well, that's a pretty
Well,
strong
yeah,
accusation.
I think you're more poetic in your lyric writing, and I'm more pop music than.
Okay, well, I'm looking
what
at.
about sorry, I was just gonna say, like, what about on Do You Ever Wonder? Was it who's
Well, I
who's
was
was
saying,
it collaborative lyric or
yes.
But more Mark.
Well,
more
I
Mark? Okay.
and I can almost guess because I've got the lyrics in front of me. Um,
Bamboozled was him.
yeah, probably, most of the first verse was me, but when I want language on my lips, fire in my hips, vision in my eyes, that sounds like a Martha thing.
Yeah,
to me.
yeah.
Um,
Vision in my eyes. This is the kind of thing I would write. I
That's
think
cool.
why that sperm met that egg.
Did you think of that?
Yeah,
That's a good. I like that line a lot.
but you wrote machinery by machinery or magic, years of patient waiting, raising of cathedrals or the splitting of the atom. That's definitely you.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that typical for many of your songs, or are any of your songs really like Mark? You come forward with a pretty finished song, or Martha, you come forward with a pretty finished song, and you guys go from there, or is there always some division?
It really depends on the song, and it depends on the time. Like the early band, I wrote my own songs and brought them in, and Martha did that too. So there was a definite feeling about like Echo Beach was mine, but Paint by Number Heart, which I still think is one of the best songs you ever wrote, was definitely, was all you. Musically, it can go a number of different ways. I mean, Martha's been has got into GarageBand like about, I don't know,
5 years ago.
5 years ago and totally owns it now. So she's been working on all these songs that are probably going to end up being a big part of the new Martha and the Muffins album.
It's great for songwriting.
But she's
Hmm.
doing that by herself, and she'll play these things. I'll go, wow, that's really cool. I guess someday I better add some guitar or some weird,
I love having drums at my fingertips though, because even if we replace the drums when we record the song, it's just to be able to have that feel, the rhythmic feel. I never have that when I was writing a song, and it's such a big part of
Mm.
how a song turns out.
And you say that your songwriting really started to take off when you got a little cassette recorder,
Yeah, I was
like
so
back
jealous.
in the day.
Mark
Right?
got his little cassette player before I did, so he was writing so many more songs than I was. I had to try to remember them on the guitar or something.
I have a question about the sound of your music. I was doing my research today, listening to a lot of your songs, and from the very beginning, they sound great. I mean, you've worked with some good producers too, but that's been one of the consistent things. I just had upgraded my stereo system, and if you're gonna listen to your song, if you're gonna listen to music on a good stereo, your music is really good to listen to on a good sound system, and that's been a constant throughout. So, what's the relationship been with you and with your producers? How's that worked for you?
Um, well, we've worked with some really great people, and Dan Lanois was certainly very good at dialing up great sounds, off the top. Um, but we would work very hard on trying to. Certainly, when we started working with him, one of the big questions, and certainly on This Is the Ice Age, was what do we want this song to mean? like when you, and this is something that I still find a lot of people don't put enough effort into. Like when we're looking at the lyrics, where is the emphasis? Like what word do you want to emphasize? What line do you want to do? What kind of sound? So you can get beyond. You have to, in a sense, get beyond your own what you're good at on your own instrument or the band's instrument, and you go, what are we trying to convey here? Like, and sometimes it's just a sound that conveys it, and the band comes in, but maybe that sound already establishes a certain emotional climate. And Dan was really good that way, because that was a big album for me in terms of writing, and there were a lot of emotional high high and low points in the writing of that in terms of what I wanted to project. And I would go, I want the sound of, like, let's get these cardboard boxes and knock them down the stairs at Grand Avenue Studio, which was Hamilton where we worked, and slow them down like 5 octaves. I want the sound of emotional collapse. So you have this like, and like, unlike other recording engineers and other producers going, oh my God, like what is Mark going to waste time on now? Dan would start setting the mics up, and he was totally into it, and to his credit, he was like sort of the George Martin of Martha and the Muffins. We'd sit down and we go, that solo in Black Stations. I think uh, Martha, and Dan were all doing something during that solo. Like one of us was running our hands up and down notes on the keyboard. Another was changing the patches as that was happening, and Dan was at the prime time in the outboard gear, like changing the speed. And we did a bunch of takes, and we go, no, that's not good enough. And it was all spontaneous and improvised. And the one you hear on that song is the one we decided to keep. So
I think atmosphere was also created that lent itself to getting into the mood.
yeah,
Because we did some writing in the studio as well. We didn't always have a full album, and we would write, and we just jam on the floor or something like that. And I remember one morning we came in, and Mark and Dan had been recording a song that Mark wrote the night before, which was the song "Swimming," and he was singing it, and it was such a beautiful song. It came out of nowhere.
yeah. I think sometimes things come out of nowhere. But to go back to the sound thing, as we got more proficient ourselves, and of course you learn things from everybody. You learn from Dan, you learn from David Lord, who worked with us on an album after that. And after a while, you get a feeling for how to get certain sounds or make certain sounds out of nothing. And of course, the tools have never been easier for that, which is a good thing and a bad thing. I mean, as an old guy, I kind of get mad at how easy it is now, because when we were, doing experimental music at the Ontario College of Art or during Ice Age, we had tape loops going around, the entire room, and sometimes they break, and you go, oh shit, and everything would grind to a halt. You'd be splicing the tape together. Now you can just do anything like that, and in a way, and maybe I'm just being grumpy about this, but in a way, when it was harder to do, it made those who wanted to work harder, and other people going, I give up on this, so uh, but there's no end to how you can get interesting sounds in the recording process. There's all sorts of tools on the internet now where people can learn how to do things. We had to learn from scratch, a lot of.
We did a lot of exploring.
Yeah, we did a lot of exploring, and
we had the luxury of time, I guess.
Earlier, you guys mentioned, I think, Mark, you mentioned the importance of groove.
In groove music.
In groove music.
Yeah.
So does that not matter, no matter what the music is? And I'm just trying to get a grapple on what groove means.
Yeah, well, you make a very good point, and I retract what I said, because there's groove in all kinds of music. There's groove in free form jazz, there's in improvised music. Obviously there's groove in funk music and all that. So what is groove? groove is listening to what's going on around you and not doing anything till you feel you can make a contribution. I think
Hmm.
maybe that's one definition.
Okay.
That's
Oh,
it's nice and succinct too.
Yeah. I always saw it as like especially when you're talking about working with producers is like what's the rhythmic heart of the song? You know, like what's not exactly the pulse, but like what is the rhythmic figure that underpins the song? Whether you know, and to me that even applies if you're just playing solo acoustic guitar and a voice. There's still a groove, and there's still you know, whether it's implied or whether it's explicit or somewhere in between. There's always, you know, a rhythmic sort of shuffle, or is it, you know, is it broken up? Is it like all those sorts of things that can make it feel a certain way? And,
Yeah,
and you're right. When other people are collaborating, everyone has to be locked into that groove, or it kind of falls apart.
but you've touched on a good point. Like in a way, when you're just by yourself with an acoustic guitar, it's almost more difficult.
Hmm.
It's more challenging because it's just you and your instrument, and it's all up to you to, you know, when you're working on a song or something, going, you know, does it have this feel? Does it have that? Am I doing an emphasis on this part of it or whatever? Whereas when you're in the room with, you know, a killer drummer or rhythm section, they're already like going, you know, and then you're
Yeah.
going, okay, they just did my work for me.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Make it easy.
Well,
Yeah,
and
I'm
that's an
just playing
interesting
off rhythm guitar.
point about you know, the old electronic music formats where you use tape loops and splicing, and that's actually I wrote that kind of music before I actually did pop music. I did that because I found out that girls didn't like the weird stuff. Um, but one of the great things about the old formats is I always felt that you could sort of it was organic. You could sort of stumble into something that's interesting. And I find it's harder to stumble into interesting things with the technology now. Like the technology almost pushes you towards pure tonality and things being in key all the time and sort of things being off. That's where all the magic happens.
I manipulate the sound a lot on GarageBand. That's the way I make it my own.
Hmm.
I take a part of a song and I stagger it on another track, so it has a different, completely different sound or rhythm. And I put effects on things, and I just try to make it my own, give it my own signature.
But we've had this discussion between the two of us because GarageBand is designed to make uh, popular music, and by popular I mean like all those areas of music that are conventional in their rhythm, in their tonality. And what you do is you're kind of you're doing that, but in a way you're working against the software because I
Yeah.
think because GarageBand is sort of the entry level into a digital audio workstation, that they're dealing with a lot of people that want to, you know, do a like sound like Michael Jackson or Nirvana or, you know, Foo Fighters or something, or your favorite folk singer, you know. So the software is leading you into that
Hmm.
direction. As you say, in the old days, a lot of it you just had to work on yourself, and which did lead. It was a more perhaps organic process. Although there are, I think there's a lot of devices now that are trying to do that. Like if you
Hmm.
look in sort of the improvised music area, there's a German guy named Heinbach that is designing instruments that have that organic feel. Like there's an iPhone app that I use that's sort of like a tape loop mangler called the Gauss Field Recorder, and you know it has that kind of organic thing that I think you're talking about, Phil. But it is, you know, there's challenges in all of this because sometimes it's best, you know, when you have all this technology, just to go into a room and pick one instrument, and it's not even necessarily an instrument you know that well, and do something on that where it's just you and that thing, or even just drum on a table or play glass half filled with water, something,
Mm.
something just to get it started.
Just something different than what you're used to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, that's
You were
important.
talking earlier about inspiration, lyrical and otherwise. The song we played a snippet of before, what was the inspiration or where did that come from?
Um, well, it's 21 years old.
Do you
Talking about
remember?
Winter Wonder, right? And um, it's about the state of being in wonder and wonderment, all the horrible stuff and all the beautiful stuff, and it's all. I think that's what the first verse was about: is how you're inundated. Even 21 years ago, we live in modern times, and there's all this media coming at us all the time. Of course, that's only gotten more so over those 2 decades. And when I look down these lyrics, I think none of them seem out of date. In fact, maybe they're even more relevant than they were
Mhm.
back then. And where do you find your pleasure? Where do you find the pain that's happening to you? Um, and I think we were trying to put it in a historical perspective too, because it was around that time that the Berlin Wall came down.
Mhm.
So you were going, I was thinking, okay, I'm not going to tell you it's hopeless because anything can happen, like the walls of Berlin and Jericho tumbling down. And so you go from like what was a current event, the Berlin, going way back into biblical imagery with the walls of Jericho being blown down by people blowing horns, and it was just something like a long timeline, the good and bad in life, and how we react to all of that. I think all of those things went into that song.
Mhm.
Let's take a listen to it and then we'll talk a bit more about it on the other side. Is there anything or any part of it in particular that we should listen for? Or a clever bridge or a neat guitar sound or
Well, all the
a turn
Brits
of phrase?
are, aren't they? I mean,
I like the dynamics of the song. The fact that it's quite, walking away, and then it pairs down to the voice and guitar, and a simpler drum pattern. It goes, "Oh my little baby,
yeah,
rock you in my arms."
I like the "Oh My Little Baby" part, and that's the same part as by Machinery or Magic, where it
Things
comes
spins out.
down.
Mm.
And I was playing my fretless guitar on this track, and that's where the riff is coming from, but it's not obvious that it's fretless. But when you get into by Machinery or Magic, that that's all on the fretless, and you can hear it more there. And you could play that part, I guess.
Well, we're going to play the whole song, so
Well, well,
take a
yeah.
listen.
Okay.
It's hard not to be bamboozled, dazzled all the time. It's hard to fight confusion when you're shaking like a leaf. I'm not going to tell you everything's okay, and obviously it isn't. People do the things they do, anything can happen. I want language on my lips, I want fire in my hips, I want vision in my eyes, I want to laugh until I cry. Do you ever wonder why there's pleasure in pain? Why the small things matter? Sometimes the big things don't. Do you ever wonder if you'll see them again? Why that sperm met that egg? By machinery or magic, years of patient waiting, the raising of cathedrals or the splitting of the atom. Not going to tell you it's hopeless, but obviously
Great track.
Awesome.
Do you like the sound of
Cool.
that guitar? It is neat.
Oh, guitar is so tasty.
Yeah, that guitar I found when down at Harbourfront in Toronto when the antique market was still there.
Mm.
I was in there when this was like ages ago, and it was a right. I'm left-handed, but there was a right-handed guitar there for $100, and I bought it with the sole intention of getting all the frets filed off it to see if I like that sound. And I thought $100, okay, you know, like if I hate it, it wasn't like you know doing that to a Les Paul or stuff. And I ended up liking it, and I've used it on lots of things ever since. And because it still has the frets, just their level with the neck, you can still see what you're doing. You know, you don't have to.
Ah.
Clever.
So you know where you are.
Yeah, you know where you are
There you go.
and where you're going. Hopefully, yeah.
Is the chord progression in the verse and the chorus the same?
Let me think about that. Yes.
No, the bridge goes to another place, but I feel like the verse and chorus, the chords are the same.
Yes, it's one of those songs where I have to think about it.
And Mark,
I think so.
I think so.
Right.
funny was
It's been a while, I guess. Yeah.
the parts and saying maybe the parts of the song. I think when we started out songwriting, we didn't know about bridges and choruses, and we just wrote the sections to songs. And
Mhm.
Mark actually wrote when he wrote Echo Beach, the third song he'd written, and he has the chorus at the end of the song. There's no chorus till the end of the song.
It wasn't like I was trying to be deliberately clever. I just didn't think.
Yeah.
To know.
Yeah. Know me better.
Well, I was gonna say how interesting the structure is. Like it's not, you know, it's because we talk about structure so much, and we tend, I think maybe as a result, we tend to actually do very sort of standard structures like verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus, end. You know, like which kind of helps you not fail. But I think maybe doing something a little bit more interesting can be great because it actually makes it a much more interesting song because you know the stanzas at the end, which are kind of referring to the verses at the beginning, um, you know, as opposed to just having verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus, end. You know.
Yeah. The other thing is we pay a lot of attention to melody.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yes.
The songs are just the same melody over and over again. We try to move it um, into this different area to give it different emotion.
Well, and to go back to the structure thing, I mean, we've certainly done lots of songs with you know verse, chorus things, and but you know other songs certainly you know what would call we call album cuts. We were much freer that way, and it does change things. You know, there's things that change your writing, like thinking about instead of verse chorus, you think about A, B, C, D, and where would A and B and C and does D go in front of A sometimes, or sometimes you cut one of them half and move them around. But also, you know, in terms of instrumentation, if you're a guitar player, I think one of the best things you can do is start experimenting with alternative tunings
Hmm.
to the extent where you make your own up. Like we had one that we called the treehouse tuning because when Martha was doing her kids album and we were doing a lot of kids shows at that time, um, I was using her brother's right-handed guitar upside down, but without changing the string
Oh boy.
things. And I think it was like, if I remember, it was like E E A G G E E. Is that six strings?
That was
Anyway, I think in the middle there was like two that were tuned in unison, and the rest were E's and B. I think it was E B G G E B. So it was very drony, but you could also play almost anything with that because it was so simple. And
Hmm.
I ended up buying that guitar from it because I loved it so much, and it's now in conventional tuning. But with a guitar, like the tone of a guitar and the sounds completely different when you change its tuning. And I would love to hear someone do that with a piano. Although I think the avant-garde composer Harry Parch did that with micro tunings, because he was all over that. But you can get very different feelings from different tunings. And again, I guess this is the theme of this conversation, is like breaking out of the mold, thinking
Yeah.
beyond what.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to that, so you put together this album, Marthology, which is in and outtakes. Were there any surprises for you going over all of this treasure trove of your past?
For me, it was discovering that my singing was actually quite good.
Yes.
I always had a
I always liked it.
Yeah. Was that even in question?
I was fairly insecure about my
Oh,
voice
no.
throughout my career, and
Hmm.
I think as a lot of people are, you always think you can do better, and you compare yourself to other people and that. But when I listened back to these songs, I was quite surprised to find that I sang very well, and I used different parts of my voice and had a lot of expression, and I was quite pleased with them.
Hmm.
And it was never dull. There's people who are fine singers, like they're good technically, but they don't have they're fine.
Character.
Yeah. And yours always like it always sounded like you. And it didn't sound like you were trying to be anything. It doesn't sound like you were trying to show off. And I always loved that actually. It was
People always know it's my voice.
yeah.
I don't sound like anybody else.
Well, we were discussing in other conversations about how limitations create style.
Hmm.
Mm.
And I brought up this analogy of, like, say you have this ace guitar player who does his first solo album. So all of the cuts on that solo album are different styles of music, and he can do all of them. But what does that amount to? It amounts to, I can play anything, which is great. And it's great if you're solely there to just be a player, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes down to songwriting or the identity you have as an artist or a band, limitations can often be the thing that defines you. We didn't know what we were doing, as we've said earlier. When we started out, most of us were self-taught. Certainly, Martha and I were. And I don't consider myself. I consider myself perhaps a clever guitar player, because the things I don't know, I just invent ways to get around. Or neither of us are keyboard players, so if we like in terms of conventional, like,
Yeah. We hate jamming.
we're not good at jamming unless it's improvisational. But I think those things make you more aware of what you can do with what you have. It's like having a piece of gear. Like, some people what's up, the end of the show?
You still got a bit of time.
Oh, okay.
Keep on going. Keep on
Anyway.
going.
Lost my glasses. Yeah, it's like having a piece of gear, and knowing it really well, or knowing your instrument really well. That creates a style. There you go.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, actually. Limitations in any way are good things.
Yeah, they shouldn't be seen as a bad thing, I think.
Yeah, they do help. Well, this music is telling us that is all the time we have tonight for Song Talk Radio. Thank you so much for joining us, and can't wait to hear your new album. Perhaps you'd come back when you have your new album out, but in the meantime, there's lots to listen to on Marthology. So all of you out there listening, let us know what you thought of the show tonight. Send your impressions on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, or to @SongTalkRadio, or send us an email to feedback@songtalk.ca. And of course, check out our YouTube channel and sign up there. Subscribe today, Song Talk Radio Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher.com, Spotify, or Podcast Addict. And you can sign up for a free newsletter at songtalk.ca as well. And of course, on songtalk.ca, you'll find links to all the products, books, and web services that we mention on the show. And please join us for our next Song Talk meetup just in a few days. It's free to join on meetup.com and free to attend it's free to join on meetup.com and free to attend the meeting. So join at songtalk.ca and you'll find the link. If you want more of us, you can find more Phil at Phil
Filmery.ca.
and Neil
neilmodi.com.
and Martha, where's the best place to find more of you?
Probably the best thing is our YouTube channels. It's just Martha and if you just Google Martha and Muffins YouTube, you'll find us. And we have our own channel. I think there's about 50 videos on there.
Oh, perfect.
One thing.
I'll check that out.
Yeah.
And of course, here, stop by the website at songtalk.ca to browse past shows and see how you could possibly be a guest. And please keep on writing. Good night.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
That was an
And
awesome
scene.
show.
And
That
scene.
was we could have been another hour actually, but
Well,
Yeah, that was really great.
because it's interesting how rarely you get to talk about the process of songwriting, in detail.
That's a
Mhm.
big part of
And
what
it's
we do.
it's obviously
Cool.
what a lot of people do, but it doesn't get talked about enough, I don't think.
That's what we strive to do.
Yeah.
There's a show on television called Songland, which was great. I don't know whether you saw.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I
Okay.
watched that. It didn't last, unfortunately, but it was
Oh.
fascinating.
I think it's
So,
tough because a lot of people, they want to know, well, what do the lyrics mean? And that's, but they don't really want to know about what chord did you go to that bridge? Is that in the same key? I mean, they don't want to hear that stuff, but I did. That's why we started this show, because I used to listen to stuff on Q, and I mean, it was great interviews, but they never actually talked about anything I cared about. I was like,
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you didn't get too deep into the chord thing because I don't know what most of the chords are. I mean,
That's okay. Sounds good.
but there are.
sure.
Thankfully,
I
there
put
are-
my hand like this. And,
Yeah,
that's
No, it's a muscle memory thing, and now there are apps that you can put the finger marks on a fretboard, and it'll tell you.
Right.
And I found out I'm a big fan of I think 6/9 chords,
Right.
but
oh yeah.
don't ask me what that means. It sounds very impressive, but
I was so upset when I finally found out what exactly a ninth chord was, because it was so simple. I'm going, why didn't someone tell me that? I was always intimidated. Like I would know where to put my fingers, but I didn't know what they meant. And then someone told me. I went, is that it?
that
It's
it.
like, really?
Mm-hmm.
So
patience
Well, thank you
tight.
very much.
Thank you very much
Thanks
for
for
thank you so
joining
much.
us.
This was
and,
awesome.
Really great.
And happy holidays too.
Yeah, to all of you too, and
Happy holidays.
thank you for this. We enjoyed it a lot.
We'd love to have you
Come
back
It's
on
nice to see
sometimes.
you guys
Please
again
do.
too.
Yeah, well, whenever, sure.
Yeah, when your album drops.
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
See you.
Fantastic.
Cool.
All right.
Later.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Take
Go on.
care.
Good to see you. Bye.